Greetings, I'm Endar. Today is the 23rd of April, 2023, and this is my review for Super Donkey Kong 2, Dixie and Diddy. Super Donkey Kong 2, Dixie and Diddy, also known as Donkey Kong Country 2, Diddy's Conquest, is a 2D platforming game developed by Rare and published by Nintendo. It was originally for the Super Nintendo Entertainment System, or the Super Famicom, released in 1995. This was my first time playing through it all. I had played a small amount when I was a kid, but didn't get very far. Therefore, this isn't really a nostalgic experience for me. I'm just playing it as it is today. I played the Japanese version on the Super Famicom as a solo experience. You can also play co-op, but I haven't done that yet. So this is purely just a solo experience review. The introduction of the game is quite brief, and I wish I knew more of what was going on. I guess Donkey Kong was captured and Diddy and his friends must go save him from King K. Rool. Setting is on an island where various animals live. King K. Rool leads a pirate crew that is basically causing trouble for Donkey Kong and his family. I find it to be a pretty fun place with a variety of interesting levels. Fortunately, the ice levels took a back seat in this one, and the underwater levels weren't too obnoxious. Diddy Kong is tasked with saving his friend Donkey Kong, who has been captured by King K. Rool. Diddy Kong and Dixie Kong are the main playable characters, sometimes switching control to their animal friends: Squitter the spider, Ramby the rhino, Rattly the snake, and Guarde the swordfish, and Squawks the parrot. There's also a support cast of characters as well that give tips and kind of heckle Diddy on his quest. That's going to be Cranky Kong, Wrinkly Kong, and Swanky Kong. Candy Kong is missing from this one, as allegedly Nintendo was worried about her sexiness. I quite like the cast and find them to be a funny bunch. I couldn't understand a lot of what was being said in the game because I was playing in Japanese, so I only understood part of it. So I don't really have a great grasp on the story, but it's pretty straightforward. So I think it was shown well enough for me to get the gist of it. King K. Rool is fantastic as the main boss, as he isn't really predictable or like a trope-filled creature. He's just a goofy creature with his own ideas. So the endings are satisfying enough. There are basically two of them. You have the main story and then the final boss encounter after 100% completing the game. The first ending is when Diddy and Dixie initially defeat King K. Rool for the first time, freeing Donkey Kong from being tied up, and then Donkey Kong does this massive punch, knocking K. Rool out of there, and that's really just Donkey Kong's only moment in the game, but it's a pretty big moment, so it was fun to see. The second ending is when K. Rool, he crawls out of the swamp for one last attempt to kind of ruin Diddy and Dixie's day, and then he fails and his island sinks. So finally, the final scene, Donkey, Diddy, and Dixie are all sitting together on a cliff at sunset watching the island sink, and K. Rool and his cronies are escaping on their pirate ship. That scene is actually quite nice. It looks nice and satisfying way to finish off the game. So the game has about 47 levels total. Tried to just count them up. They vary in theme from pirate ship, lava caves, mine shafts, swamps, vine mazes, honeycombs, amusement parks, forests, an abandoned library, icy caves, castles, and jungles. So therefore, this is a pretty good game for variety in levels. The shining element really for me is actually the bosses, and obviously that's not a huge part of your playtime necessarily, but they're quite fun and challenging and unique, and just the boss designs are they're fun. The gameplay is pretty standard 2D platforming, except for when you control the other animal friends who each have their own controls and abilities. Also, both of the monkeys, that's Diddy and Dixie, can be on the screen at once, and you can pick up the second monkey and throw them. So this can lead to kind of secret areas with secret barrels and allowing them to access higher and farther away platforms. There are also DK coins, also known as Game Hero coins in the Japanese version, to collect KONG letters in each level that spells out Kong, and Krem coins. And each of those kind of does a different thing. And Kong is pretty easy to find in most levels. There's a few that are hidden. And then the DK coins and the Krem coins are harder. You have to do secrets and find hidden areas to get them. Sometimes you must like pass through what looks like solid walls or just death obstacles, kind of like Tomb Raider or Zelda 2 style. So that can be really tricky. The controls are fairly tight, but it can be hard to tell where the hitboxes are due to the way the characters sort of seamlessly blend with the backgrounds. And something about the visuals just make it hard to keep track of exactly where you are. And I think having that second monkey following you around is just that's the main thing. It distracts you and kind of makes it hard to track just your character. And it probably is the thing that deters the most from just feeling in good control of your character. Also, when you do an attack, it pushes your character in that direction, and you can't pull back completely. So if you're trying to start running, you're gonna do an attack, and it's gonna move you forward, and that can be a problem when you're on like a small platform or where you don't want to move, but you want to be able to do a running jump. So that's kind of an issue because the run and attack buttons are on the same button. The difficulty isn't awful for getting through just the story, but it would be a very long time to find all the secrets by yourself. This definitely kind of felt like the sort of game where the Nintendo paid help phone line was utilized for it. I had some hints from a friend while getting through this, but I never used a guide. It was one of the more frustrating games I've played, mainly because of not really feeling in great control. It doesn't save your lives or banana coins when you save the game, so every time you restart the game, you have to basically go and grind out lives again, which is kind of a boring way to start your play session. and then there's only one checkpoint per level, which for a lot of levels that's fine, but there are a few long ones that basically you just want to practice the hard section, but you have to repetitively do this easier section that you already cleared a bunch of times, and that can just get really frustrating and annoying and kind of boring, which when you start getting bored, you start making careless mistakes, and that just causes more deaths, and it just kind of ruins your play session. Yeah. That's kind of one of my biggest issues with it. And I would say just one of the most annoying things is how poorly utilized the controller is. Despite there being plenty of unused buttons on the controller, they put the run and attack actions on the same button. And there's also like no way to check like what letters of Kong you have or anything by pressing a button, which would have been helpful just to see like what you have in the level. Graphically, the game looks quite nice, I think. But for my experience, it was through a capture card upscaled to HDMI, and honestly, it just didn't hold up that well. It kind of looked muddy and like dark in areas. It just, I guess, I think it could be a lot better, and it probably was when it originally released. If you're playing on like a CRT through like original settings, but that's like, yeah, a lot of people aren't experiencing it that way today, so it's a bit of an aging issue, I guess. But I am curious what it would look like properly. The sound is well done. There's fun enemy sounds, and there's certainly a standout soundtrack. This is definitely probably the main strength of the game. Sadly, I didn't have really an ideal listening experience during my playthrough. Just because of my setup, I had to use a monitor speaker, so it just wasn't very good. But I have listened to most of the soundtrack separately with a headset and everything, and it's quite nice. and I'll have to listen to it more, and maybe I'll review that as well. But my favorite songs are going to be Sticker Brush Symphony, Run Ramby Run, Forest Interlude, Token Tango, and Funky the Main Monkey. But really, the whole soundtrack is worth a listen for sure, and it's awesome, really. So, recommended to check that out whether or not you play the game. The game did feel quite long. It's just jam-packed with levels, really, and especially when you're hunting for all the secrets. The playtime on my save file was 19 hours, 17 minutes, but in reality it was probably closer to like 25 to 30 hours with, if you include game overs and whatnot. And that's not to say it was too long. I think this is actually a good thing if you're really enjoying the game. So I guess I just anticipated it wouldn't be such a long playthrough, even though I experienced the same thing when I played the first game, where I thought it was going to be shorter, and it turned out that it's actually kind of long. The pacing and difficulty scaling was good, though, and the final levels are being the most challenging, and it didn't feel like you all of a sudden hit a wall or anything like that. I guess the main thing, it does ramp up in like World 4 or 5, I want to say, and you just want to have your lives built up, and you can just go and grind them out in the earlier levels, which it's not fun to do that, but it's going to really make your playthrough a lot smoother. So I do recommend doing that if you're struggling for lives. I guess another thing is that you can't save the game. You have to get to a certain spot to save the game. So if you start a new world, you might have to clear a few levels before you can get to a save point. And that's just kind of an annoying thing. It'd be nice to be able to just save after each level. So as far as the experience, the story playthrough experience, so just doing the story, I think that is definitely a fun time, and I had a good time with that. And if you don't go hunting too hard for secrets, or have to stock up on lives every single time you load up the game, it could go pretty smoothly. The 100% completion experience was rough and frustrating. Finding the secrets without a guide or help is quite the task that I think can have you stumped for a very long time. So you're probably going to want to use hints or a guide. I mean, I think it's better if you can avoid using a guide, but you might need to if you're just playing on your own. And yeah, each level can feel like it takes a long time if you're dying a lot. Like if you're dying 20 or more times on the same checkpoint, it can be a bit grueling, just because you're repeating parts that feel easy and boring, and then all of a sudden you get to the hard part and then you mess it up again, and then you have to do it again and again and again. So yeah, I used hints from a friend, just finding the secrets a bit more liberally in this playthrough compared to the first game, just because I wanted to not get hung up for too long and lose interest in continuing to play the game, which I think sometimes I did feel like I hit that limit for that play session. And overall, I think it just made this playthrough take longer. It took me around 2 months to do, playing maybe a few hours a few times a week. The endgame experience for this game would basically just be speed running, which I don't really feel compelled to do at this time, because I'd rather just play the sequels and whatnot. But I have a friend who quite enjoys doing that. He beat the game 3 times when I just beat it just this once, at least 3 times. And then he did like the first game two times as well in that time. It's nice that the game tracks your gameplay time and doesn't count when you're on the hub screen, or like when you're chatting with the other characters, just doing like the dialogue and stuff. I would say the profoundly positive elements of the game are definitely the soundtrack, variety of levels, the bosses, and the variety of playable characters. The profoundly negative elements of the game are going to be the lives and banana coins not being saved when you save the game, lack of checkpoints on a few of the long levels, and the attack and run actions not being on separate buttons. And also, I don't really find it that fun to always have to hold the run button. I think just having a one speed it works for a lot of games, and I'm curious how that would feel for this one. So, and it's another thing is that it's also really odd that Donkey Kong isn't a playable character, but I can get over that aspect. As an individual game, I think it's very playable and stands on its own legs. As for its place in the Donkey Kong series as a whole, I think the Donkey Kong Country games are the best sub-series as far as my experience so far. I haven't played a ton of Donkey Kong games, but I have played, the first 3 arcade games and Donkey Kong Country 1 and 2 now, and a little bit of the third one, and a little bit of Donkey Kong 64. And obviously I've seen some of Donkey Kong's experiences, or I guess maybe like cameos in like Smash Bros. And Mario Kart, Double Dash, things like that. So as far as that goes, it's probably my favorite Donkey Kong game so far that I've played, not counting ones that I haven't actually finished playing through. And it's a great follow-up to the original with improvements and more variety of characters. I would have liked to see the characters from there's a few animal friends from the first game that didn't make an appearance here, like the ostrich, and there's like one other one that I can't think of off the top of my head. So it would have been nice if they were included. Less ice levels and less ridiculously hidden secrets did make it for a better experience. The first one's a bit rougher on that. But I don't have much experience beyond these first 2 Donkey Kong Country games, so I can't really compare it to much else. I think I'll enjoy Donkey Kong 64 more, as I like 3D platformers more generally, but I haven't played it enough yet to say for sure. Apparently this game is the 7th best-selling title of the SNES and Super Famicom. It should be noted that it was bundled with the system for a time, so that obviously boosts its sales by a lot. But yeah, I don't have very much experience with a lot of Super Nintendo games, so I can't really comment on how deserved this, I guess, ranking in the best-selling titles is, but I would guess that it does deserve that. I don't know the top 6 off the top of my head. I think they're more like, Mario games, Zelda, those kind of things, which for me, I'm probably always going to put Donkey Kong before Mario in a lot of cases. Zelda, I think I probably enjoy more than Donkey Kong, but it's a hard comparison because they're different games. So yeah, overall, Super Donkey Kong 2, Dixie and Diddy was a difficult, sometimes fun, sometimes frustrating, and interesting experience. There was a lot to play here and an awesome soundtrack to go along with you on the adventure. It's more interesting than Mario, so I'll give credit to Rare and Nintendo for that. I prefer Mega Man and sometimes probably Sonic the Hedgehog games to this, but it definitely has a place among the top 2D platformers for me. In time, we'll see how it holds up against other ones I play in the future. There are some key things that a new port or a remaster or a remake could do to make this game significantly better. That would be somehow make the hitboxes and like the walkable spaces a bit more clear without breaking like the seamlessness of it. And I think that would be hard to do. But yeah, also saving the lives and banana coins when you save the game. And I think this was changed for the Game Boy Advance version, which is really nice. And just adding a few checkpoints to a few of the longest levels, at the very least, after the spider part on Animal Antics, which is like the last level on the Lost World, that would go a long way, I think, because that part, I wanted to practice the parrot part, but I had to keep replaying the spider part over and over, and it was grueling. Finally, just I think adding time trials to the levels would be a fun addition as well. And overall, yeah, I look forward to playing Donkey Kong Country 3, not right away, but at some point, and then especially Donkey Kong 64, I look forward to. So overall, my rating for today, 1 to 100. This isn't what I think of it, of how good of a game it is. This is just my experience with it, how much I enjoyed it. Overall, I'm going to give it a 73. So this number may change over time as I review more games, and it probably will. Scores 70 to 79 are for things that I generally enjoyed and have a decent chance of re-engaging with in the future. But for now, I'm going to go to the sequels. And that's going to be it for my review for Super Donkey Kong 2, Dixie and Diddy, also known as Donkey Kong Country 2, Diddy's Conquest. So, it's a game that I probably recommend to anybody who likes 2D platformers or are really into Donkey Kong. But if you're really into Donkey Kong, you've probably already played it. So yeah, that's what I think of that. And let me know what your rating is. Not how good you think the game is, just how much you enjoyed it and your experience. And I would be really interested to hear more people who are experiencing it today for the first time and not experiencing it as a nostalgic experience, just because you can take the game more for just what it is in that scenario. But yeah, I'm sure a lot of people have a lot of good experiences of this game when it came out. And that's always a fun time too. So that's going to be it for now. Thanks for listening.